Back here in HQ, it is time for Jamey's start of the week. Jamey has been on a heater, man, a 3-week heater to be exact. So we're going to see if we can make it 4 in a row. And his start of the week is Brock Purdy. And this is a guy who has been good despite having some difficulties in terms of his weapons on offense. No CMC, we know that for about another month or so. Dealt with the whole hold-out, hold-in situation with Brandon Ayuk. And then we had Deebo and Kittle missing the same game because of injuries. And even with that, Purdy put up almost 32 fantasy points. Shout out to Juwan Jennings as well. But Jamey expects Brock Purdy to have a big game week 5 against the Cardinals. He's rostered in most PPR leagues. Sportsline, really high on Brock Purdy, coming in 2nd in the ranks.
He's due. He's really due. You know, I mean, you mentioned it. The game against the Rams was his only game over 20 fantasy points so far this season, and it was without Deebo and George Kittle. So we need to see Ayuk step up. We obviously need to see all these guys playing well. We haven't seen the yak, the yards after catch, that's been missing from this 49ers offense, but it all comes together against a familiar foe, the Arizona Cardinals. He loves beating up on them. He's played them 3 times in his career. All 3 times, 23 or more fantasy points, averaging 27 fantasy points or more, averaging over 27 fantasy points, I'll get that right, in those 3 meetings. And the Cardinals have been bad. 2 quarterbacks already this season have been over 26 fantasy points against Arizona, so I think this is going to be the game where we see the best of Brock Purdy from the usual standpoint, where not a lot of passing yards. He's been throwing the ball very well, but this is going to be a multiple touchdown game. I think we're going to get 3 touchdowns for him, hopefully 1 to each of his receivers.
He's done that, 3 touchdowns, 2 of his 3 games against Arizona. I agree. I think that's exactly the type of game. And even if you get you 2 touchdowns with, let's call it 200 yards, let's just make it a nice even number, that's still 20 fantasy points. That's not bad. Maybe he runs for a little bit. That's how a lot of the quarterbacks that have done well against Arizona have put up huge points, by running the ball. So it's not something that Purdy does a lot of, but I think this week there's a lot of questionable quarterback situations. He feels safe to me. So I'm happy to start Brock Purdy.
In that game against the Rams, he ran for 41 yards. He has at least 11 yards rushing or more in every game. So he's getting you a point with his rushing. He's averaging 18 rushing yards per game. So the mobile Brock Purdy is what we've seen a little bit this year.
And, you know, he is an Arizona native, so I have to think, you know, maybe mom and dad being there, is that like give him an extra boost? But
well, they're home. They're home. So, you know,
my gosh.
But facing the Cardinals, I get
they always, whatever.
He'll put on a show for his friends back home.
Yeah, exactly.
We forget about that because he went to Iowa State.
I know. I always
think,
forget.
oh, he must be from around. No, he's not.
I was thinking about this with Brandon Ayuk too, because he went to ASU. You know, so he got they just like playing that team no matter where it is.
And speaking of Brandon Ayuk, he is somebody else that is going to be in your starts on your list.
I hope he's a start for a lot of fantasy managers because he's been a bust so far. He has yet to get over 10 fantasy points in a game this season. But again, he's due, and he's got a great history against this team as well. 3 of his last 5 games against the Cardinals, he's been north of 16 fantasy points. So I hope he hits what his projections are here because that would be a season high. But let's get to another level that we know Brandon Ayuk is capable of. Like I said, I'd like to see all 3 of the main weapons for Brock Purdy, Kittle, Ayuk, Deebo, all finding the end zone. Amari Cooper is also due for a big game. He's got 1 good game so far this season. It was against the Giants in week 3. He's been sub 10 fantasy points in all of his other 3 matchups, but Washington just bleeds fantasy points to opposing wide receivers, #1 in the position in terms of points allowed. So hopefully Cooper comes through with a big game. I think Deshaun Watson's going to have one of his better games, and Cooper will typically be a big part of that. Dontavian Wicks has a big opportunity in front of him now because of the absence of Christian Watson. Thankfully, Watson's not going to go on IR, so Wicks may not have the long leash that we were expecting, but at least in the short term, in this matchup against the Rams, they give up so many big plays. Jordan Love should be looking for Wicks along with Jaden Reed, Romeo Doubs as well. But I love the setup for Dontavian Wicks. And then Najee Harris has been awful. He's been tough to trust. But he does have this great opportunity against the Cowboys defense that's missing 2 of its key pass rushers. And I think we'll see the Pittsburgh Steelers offense able to do almost whatever they want to, but I know they're going to want to run the ball. And no Jaylen Warren, at least not in practice so far. Cordell Patterson left the game last week, so he's also banged up. They're going to bring a couple guys off the practice squad to help out, but this should be the Najee Harris show, and he has 11 catches in his last 11 targets in his last 2 games, 8 catches. He's getting more involved in the passing game. That's what we love to see. So just find the end zone, Najee. You'll make a lot of fantasy managers happy.
He was real close 2 weeks ago for finding the end zone, and this should be the game where he does it. And Amari Cooper should have had a monster touchdown last week. Got called back by a penalty. I am a little nervous about that Browns offense, not because of the matchup, but because 4 starting offensive linemen might not play. And that means that Deshaun Watson's going to have to get the ball out quick. It could be a mess, but still too much upside for Amari Cooper. He's in my top 24 at wide receiver this week.
Okay, Dave, we're going to get to your starts, and we have DeAndre Swift in there, and it's a tale as old as time because weeks 1 through 3, he put up 5 or less fantasy points for me. So I bench him naturally, right? As one does. And of course, week 4, he puts up what, like double digits, 22?
29.5.
Yeah, 29.5.
Yeah.
I think it was 22 in my league.
But you won, didn't you?
You're probably
I did win.
half PPR.
Yeah, half PPR. I did win. However,
a lot of people that had DeAndre Swift on
that's
their
a
bench
big
did
difference.
not win.
But
Of
we're
course
starting
it's a
him.
huge difference.
We're starting him this week.
His role changed last week, and this is for the better, and this is what makes me confident in DeAndre Swift this week. 7 targets, 7 catches. That includes 3 designed targets. These are screenplays where he gets the catch, gets some yards after it. Chicago kind of beat it into Caleb Williams' head. Hey, it's okay to check down once in a while, and he did it in that game, and now he's taking on Carolina. They can't stop anybody on the ground. So DeAndre Swift, a top 20 running back for me in week number 5. Justin Fields is a top 10 quarterback. Jamey said it. They should be able to do whatever they want to. The Cowboys will not have Micah Parsons, will not have DeMarcus Lawrence. That means he'll have time to throw, Fields will, and he'll be able to just take off whenever any pressure that the Cowboys do muster up gets near him. I think he's good for another 20-point game. Jamey, how long have I been against Javonte Williams? how many months?
Speaking of a tale as old as time.
Yeah, right. But I like him this week because he gets the Raiders 15 or more non-PPR points to a running back in 3 of their 4 games this season. Javonte dominated carries and playing time for the Broncos last week. T. Higgins' volume is in his favor against the Ravens. Brian Thomas Jr., 9 targets in each of his past 2 games. He had 22 PPR points basically in week number 4. I think he bounces back in week number 5. And you saw Tucker Kraft on that list. Really was terrible the first 3 weeks of the season. He pulled a DeAndre Swift, and really it was because the Packers threw so much in week number 4. I think they're going to need Kraft again in week 5. Good streaming tight end, which means by default, because tight ends suck, he's a top 10 guy this week.
Just need 6 targets. Last year he had 4 games with at least 6 targets. He scored 10 or more PPR points in 3 of them. If you get 10 PPR points at the tight end position right now, you're basically a top 5 guy. So hopefully he just keeps that volume up. And again, no Christian Watson, so all these guys now become a little bit more elevated. And Luke Musgrave also banged up as well for the Packers.
Yeah, so if you got Kraft on the waiver wire, congratulations to you for this week. Dave, let's talk about your sits, and we're talking about Patrick Mahomes. And Jamey, this is something you mentioned in an article. We have to go back to week 7 of last season, the last time that Patrick Mahomes had more than 25 fantasy points, which is crazy.
More than 20. 1 game over 20 in the last 7 games. It's pretty since week 7 of last year.
How about in his past 20 regular season games, he's had 20 plus in 8 of them, 25 plus in 3 of them. Oh, there's the tweet.
There we go.
That I sent out. And you can see at the bottom of this tweet, he's still throwing the ball a good amount. He's just not getting crazy yardage. He's not having a lot of those 3 touchdown games that we kind of got accustomed to. And I thought he'd have a lot of them because the receiving corps added Xavier Worthy, added Hollywood Brown. I thought Rashee Rice would be good. I didn't think he'd be that good, but now he loses Rashee Rice. Marquise Brown's not playing for them this year, and Xavier Worthy had the big splash play, a touchdown last week. Mahomes still had 15 fantasy points in that game. And oh, by the way, he's taking on the Saints. They did a number on Dak Prescott already this year. Jalen Hurts too. I'm happy to start Justin Fields, Brock Purdy ahead of Patrick Mahomes. Some other sits on my list, Zach Moss. That Ravens run defense is for real, and he was splitting rushing downs work with Chase Brown. I think Chase Brown is going to end up being the best running back in Cincinnati. I'm trying to buy low on him. Jackson Smith and Jigba, I don't know how much work he's going to have to do. I think Seattle can run their way to victory, and it just so happens the Giants are top 3 in PPR points per game allowed to receivers who line up in the slot. So that makes me a little bit nervous about JSN, but it doesn't make me nearly as nervous as I am about anything having to do with Mark Andrews. Holy moly, 2 targets in his last 2 games. You can't trust him. He's a touchdown or bust fantasy tight end at this point.
And what about, I mean, you know, I got to insert a little Q&A here.
Go ahead.
I have Zach Moss, and honestly, my running backs are a little thin in this particular league. Carson Steele, would you do that over it? Like,
you can't do that because I don't know if Carson Steele's going to touch the ball.
I think
five
that
times.
was negative fantasy points.
Here's
last
the
week.
thing with Zach Moss, and I have him as a sit and start sit as well. The one thing that makes me somewhat encouraged by this is that he's the one still playing on passing downs. And this is a game where the Bengals are going to throw it. As Dave said, the Ravens' run defense is fantastic. The only concern I have is and Dave brought this up, last week we saw them rotating running down work. Do they give all the running down work now to Chase Brown? And then you're just relying on the passing downs work for Zach Moss. So he'll catch the ball. He scored a receiving touchdown now twice on the season. Will he continue to find the end zone? If he doesn't, it's going to be, I think, a little bit of a down stat line. But you see here, Dave says sit. I say he's the bust alert for me. He still likes him. Sportsline. It's a bad week for running backs. So don't go Carson Steele. Stick with Zach Moss. but just don't expect a big game.
I'd be okay flexing Zach Moss,
That's a
but
good move.
I would hope that you'd have a better receiver that could start ahead of him on your bench.
100%. Let's go to your
And this
sits.
has been the Jacqueline Hour.
No, there's more to come, Jamey. Buckle up. We got to get to your sits. We got to get to your sits first, though. We're talking about the Steelers defense. They're the real deal. So, of course, Dak Prescott is on your sits list for Week 5.
Dak Prescott, Kyler Murray, 2 quarterbacks that were drafted as starters, 2 guys that are in some tough spots this week. You know, Dave mentioned the Saints did a number on Dak. He's had 2 really bad games so far this season, and now you're asking him to take on a Steelers defense that's really pissed off after what happened to them in the Colts game last week where they couldn't get to the quarterback. They're going to get to Dak. Now, you know he's going to throw a lot because the run game is certainly not existent right now for the Cowboys, but I think this is going to be a sub 20-point game for Dak. And really, he's got 1 game over 21 fantasy points per game. Last week was just a 20 against the Giants, so he's not having a good fantasy season, and I think these projections are right. He's going to be under 20 fantasy points. Kyler Murray has 1 good game, and if you were to say the last 2 weeks he's taken on Detroit and Washington and couldn't get over 18 fantasy points, he's been bad. And this is not the week to trust him against the San Francisco defense that's had his number 4 of his last 5 games against 49ers. He's been under 20 fantasy points. I don't think this is going to be a great week for Kyler Murray, so I try to sit him as well. The big name on this list clearly is Tyreek Hill. Now, this is not an outright sit Tyreek Hill because we saw last week Tyler Huntley just missed him on a ball down the field. He can make your fantasy week in 1 play, but he's actually getting outperformed point-wise by Jalen Waddle, who we're just saying sit outright completely. So if we're going to say that about Jalen Waddle, we got to put a little bit of a clamp on Tyreek Hill in terms of saying he's a must-start guy. So in 2 receiver leagues, you hopefully have better options, and I would consider sitting him. Now, he's mad. You know that could lead to a big game, but this Patriots game, this Dolphins game, it's going to be a low-scoring affair because both these offenses stink and both these quarterbacks are struggling right now. So it's just not a slam dunk that Tyreek Hill should be in your lineup, which I hate to say, but it's just the nature of where we are right now.
I'm kind of okay with Dak and Tyreek. It's really close between those 2. Dak, I think, just by pure volume and by what Joe Flacco was able to kind of expose with the Steelers, who are down one of their top pass rushers, I think Dak can get you close to 20 fantasy points. You saw the projection, 18.6. That's going to be good enough to be a top 10 quarterback this week. And I thought...
Oh, I hope not.
I hope not.
I hope not.
But I think that's how it's going to be. Tyler Huntley, I thought, played a little bit better as the game went on last week. And look, he's only been with the Dolphins for like 3 practices. Another week worth of practice. I think Tyreek Hill will be okay. I've got him as a top 24 receiver. Yeah, not a top 20 guy. So I don't know where you have him, but
25.
Like, so right on the fence.
Most people aren't sitting Tyreek Hill. And again, I get it.
Yeah.
But in a 2 receiver league and a flex, especially half PPR like you're in, if you have the chance to play a running back in the flex and you have 2 better receivers, you're sitting Tyreek Hill.
Would you start Hill or Zach Moss?
In half PPR, I start Moss.
Wow.
I'll take Tyreek.
He's finding the end zone. Tyreek's
That's
not.
true. I guess that's a true point. But Brian Thomas Jr., who was on my list, easily ahead of Tyreek.
I take both Jaguars receiver over.
Wow.
Yeah, I would too.
And that's saying something. Zach Moss, I have him in 1 league. I have Chase Brown in another. So that brings us to our bonus question of the hour. Chase Brown, Charbonnet in a flex, or Tyler Lockett?
Yikes.
I go Chase Brown, just with the hope that he's getting more involved. Like,
Yikes is so not encouraging.
Yeah, I'd like to know who's on waivers. You might be able to find somebody who's better, honestly, on waivers, because I'm worried about Lockett. He always has upside, but he never gets more than like 10 fantasy
This is half or full PPR?
This is half PPR.
So there might be a chance that both Rams receivers are available, Tutu Atwell and
Jordan Whittington.
Keep an eye on 2 Giants. If Devin Singletary is out,
listen,
Tyrone Tracy could be the option there and going to get a lot of work against a really banged up Seahawks defense. And Darius Slayton, who may get an opportunity here without Malik Neighbors. They're throwing the ball right now. 65% of their targets for the Giants are going to 2 players. That's a lot.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
So some of them have to shake out. What about Wan'Dale Robinson if he's on the waiver wire?
Well, Robinson would be an easy one. I mean, I was thinking of guys that are just readily available.
Right.
But yeah, and any of the injury replacement guys, and take a look. Alexander Madison. Zamir White got hurt in practice yesterday. He's available about 25% of leagues. If Madison's the full-time starter, he may run away with the job.
He already is. He already is.
All right, I'm taking notes. I'm taking notes because I'm going up against the commish, Tommy Tran. So I got to try to stay perfect against
Tommy
him.
Teaser?
Yes.
The new proud father?
Exactly.
Right.
Papa Tran, yes.
This is your undefeated team?
My undefeated team, yes. All my eggs are in the basket here.
You may just have to, give him one, as a gift.
That's not how this works.
That's
Jamey.
not at all.
Absolutely
No,
not.
This is the time to beat Tommy because he can't be down about it because he's got the newborn.
Exactly. So I'm trying to go 5-0. Keep you all posted. Jamey, Dave, we certainly appreciate it.
You never tell us. You never tell us.
I never tell you. I'm so humble. You would never know that I'm 4-0 in fantasy. You can hear the guys on Fantasy Football Today. Download, follow, listen, ask your questions wherever you get your pods, or you can scan that QR code.